Holy God, you gather us again in this place to listen and to discover how to live more faithfully. May we breathe in your Spirit, opening us to receive your announcements. The disruption experienced or witnessed makes us feel helpless, yet you invite us to renew our identity as your beloved. Let us learn from each other, and let Christ, the light, illumine and guide us. Amen. We begin our journey with Joseph by noting that he, like Zechariah and Elizabeth before him, is a righteous man. But what does it mean to be righteous? How does that righteousness shape the way we empathize with or resist the stories that are unfolding before us? For many, righteousness has to do with obedience and rule following. Rule breakers are, by definition, unrighteous. Joseph, as an extension of his world, likely would have had a similar sensibility. As a Jewish man living in an occupied country, shaped by his tradition and norms, he was engaged to a young girl whose unexplainable pregnancy was both a personal and a societal affront to his dignity. We know he was also, by implication, a man of kindness who wants to do the correct thing, divorce her, but in a gentle way, privately, to save her public disgrace. For Joseph, as for many of us who have lived through challenges to our understandings of right and wrong and changed our perspectives, the unfolding of this deeply personal disruption must have been deeply unsettling. Whatever path he chose had implications for himself and his reputation, as well as for the woman to whom he had pledged his life. At first he chooses to stay with the tradition of his formation and his community and to put her aside. The language of this decision, he had resolved to do this, hints at the struggle this good man has endured and the weariness such hard decisions evoke in us. His decision is not a particularly courageous one. His intended path in no way challenges the system or puts his own life at risk of real or harm. It is correct, but it is not brave. But then he dreams. And in the dream, a second disruption, a challenge to the way things have always been, and one that puts Joseph at risk of ridicule, of reputational harm, of being played for a fool and stuck with the financial and emotional obligation to raise a child not his own, with a wife who was by all common understanding must have been unfaithful. This was the time for courage. And the courage Joseph is asked to reach for requires him to break with tradition. It requires him to believe that fidelity to a dream and a promise will be more faithful and a more authentic way forward than merely following the rules. Before we continue, let us pause to open ourselves up to God and experience our day thus far. Share with each other in the group the answer to these two questions. For what moment am I most grateful today? And for what moment am I least grateful today? Joseph, like Job of the Old Testament, is noted for trying his very best to follow the rules. The rule being called into question was the one that said a man and a woman spent a year betrothal before they were married. During this year of waiting, they were not to have sexual relations. If this rule was violated, the man could refuse to marry the woman, and she could be stoned for bringing shame on her future husband and both of their families. Joseph is credited as demonstrating compassion, grace, and forgiveness by deciding to put her away quickly. For Matthew, Joseph is often interpreted by scholars as an archetype of Christ who comes to teach about a loving and forgiving God. This archetype is demonstrated primarily in and through the messenger, the angel, from God appearing, and Joseph choosing to remain with Mary and the child.
Looking back on it, I was so fortunate that I was able to find all 16 family members that were killed. I was so grateful for that. But many others have spent all these years not knowing. Long after the tsunami, I was working on my land. And as soon as I had taken 2 steps, I found remains. I immediately went home for the shroud of cotton cloth, wrapped the bones, and buried them in the cemetery. I had already made a promise in my heart that if I found remains, I would take care of them. At that time, I think God was acting as a mediator from deep inside me. The God who provides everything. The God who has given me life then continues to be with me now. There is a connection.
And I wear her bracelet every day. Her dad had it made in Trinidad one summer she went, so I wear her bracelet and I wear it on my left arm because she was left-handed. So I feel like I always have Brichelle with me. It just says Bree J. When she was younger, it was one that said Brichelle, but he would constantly take the gold and have it melted and make bigger and bigger ones. So this was the last one made. The trial has started, and that's really draining. Really emotionally draining, sitting in a courtroom every day from morning to evening. One of the guys, he took a plea, and he's pretty much told the story from beginning to end. And, you know, he specifically addressed me in the court. He was so hurt that he hurt a little girl. Then he says, you know, Miss Jeffries, I've been wanting to tell you for a long time. I'm so sorry, you know, as he crying. And I just got up and walked out of the courtroom. I don't want to hear it, you're sorry. I can't make Brichelle safe because she's dead. But I can certainly try to make other people's children, myself and the rest of the community and society safe by making sure that all these illegal guns are not falling into violent people's hands. We have a right to be safe. And we have a right to live. And I just can't accept that. I'm not going to accept that. not as a mother, not as a citizen of the United States. I'm not accepting it.
I knew absolutely nothing about immigration detention. And then I made my first visit.
ምክንያቱ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ወላ ሓደ ቤተሰብ የብለይን እቲኦም ኣሕዋት ኣለዉ እንጂ መፃኒ ከሎ ሰብ
I thought this is a really important thing for us to be doing.
Llegó a mi vida otra vez el ánimo. Y recibo la primera visita. Yo, durante todo el tiempo que había tenido de estar encerrado, no había recibido visita de nadie.
Most people have no idea that one of the largest immigrant detention facilities is in Georgia.
The Stewart Detention Center was originally built as a medium security prison. Seeing how far away it is from Atlanta, it takes about 12 hours to get down and go back. The detainees don't have access to legal assistance.
I visited a young man, and I was his first visitor in 9 months. And he was pretty hopeless at that point. And I was so struck by the lack of due process. Most immigrants in detention don't have legal representation. I had a range of emotions, compassion for this person, but anger at the system. And that began to fuel this unexpected passion. It was no longer just starting a new volunteer program, but it was really personal for me.
ምክንያቱ ንዓይ ፍሉይ እዩ እንደገና ኣብኡ ነረ ገና ንምሳይ ዝነበረ ከይደ ክሪኦ ከለኹ ፍሉይ እዩ كده تزبلت يعني حدا نتي مسايز نبرة كرخبو زعبيم جن تسفان قهوبو مهناتو تسفان هالكوري سكايت زعبيم موت شمكات تقوي لو تخلها سمعك سمعت من البعض تبتميت ما صرت لازم أعتقد أيردعكم نقاني
When COVID-19 hit our community, I would say courage is a part of our identity. Like you said, because of the experience that we have had in other areas in dealing with tragic events, there's like almost a built-in nature in this community that we are going to fight. And as I talk about this even right now, I want to help. We have so many people in our community who have had the courage, who have had the care and concern to want to help. That's one of the things I love about our community. Even when I talk about courage, sometimes there are entities or people who are only concerned about themselves. Our educational systems come together. With our medical communities, with our faith communities, with our social service communities. And everybody has a seat at the table, coming together to collaborate, to brainstorm, to share resources and share information, and how we're going to get it to the people. What is going to be the next best step? What's going to be the next right thing to do to help the people? And that's what I'm seeing. And I think in this season, even some of the people that I've spoken with, the whole concept of faith over fear and wisdom over foolishness, it has been a real key.
As we close this session, there are 6 discussion questions for you to consider. You can discuss these with each other, or perhaps you can write them down and take them away as homework. Question number 1. How do you define courage? Is it different than bravery? Question number 2. Do you have any specific examples of courage that required the person or group to go against received tradition, law, and order, the commonly held mores of their family or community or church? Question number 3. Have you ever experienced a tension between being perceived positively by your family or community and speaking up on behalf of what you believe to be more right or true? Question number 4. Can you recall a time when a disruption invited you to be courageous? Question number 5. Can you recall a time in the life of your congregation when a disruption invited you to be courageous collectively? Question number 6. What is the relationship between courage and hope in the lives of the protagonists and the clips and in their characters of the biblical text? In the next session, we will close this series by learning from Mary how to use our voice. Let us close in prayer. Lord, you provide shelter, comfort, and strength to us. We lift up our concerns and distress for you to hear because we know you care. Help us to have the courage to speak out where you have revealed the need. Give us the wisdom to understand how disruptions in our lives are opportunities to do what is right. Thank you for the strength you offer in love, the shelter we find in your Son, and the comfort we find in your Spirit. Amen.